All right, today we're diving into something pretty important. We're putting a new government bill under the microscope. Now, it's designed to fight hate, which sounds good, right? But what if its very design, its blueprint, is the real problem? That's what one fascinating legal critique argues, and we're going to break down exactly how.
So let me just throw this out there. What if a law written with the very best intentions to catch extremists, could, just by its own text, accidentally make criminals out of an entire police force? I know, it sounds wild, doesn't it? But stick with me, because that very idea is at the core of the powerful stress test we're about to explore.
Okay, so first things first, what are we actually talking about here? It's the Combatting Antisemitism, Hate and Extremism Bill of 2026. And look, on the surface, its goal is something pretty much everyone can get behind. I mean, who doesn't want to tackle some of the worst harms in our society? But, and this is really, really important, the goal of this law isn't what's in dispute. The analysis we're looking at today focuses entirely on something else, the fundamental design of the law itself, how it's built, its very architecture.
And this quote from the source really nails the whole approach. It says, the critique advanced here is structural, not moral, architectural, not emotive, legal, not ideological. So what does that mean? It means we're leaving politics and our feelings at the door. This is all about the legal nuts and bolts, the blueprint of the bill. You really got to keep that framework in mind for everything that's about to follow.
Okay, so how is this thing actually supposed to work? Well, the source has a great name for its core mechanic, the designation machine. It sounds a little ominous, right? Let's take a look under the hood and see how it's put together.
So the engine of this whole thing is something called executive designation. Basically, it gives one single government minister the power to just point at an organization and declare it a prohibited hate group. And the really critical part here? This isn't a judge making a ruling in a courtroom. Nope, it's an executive action based on the minister just being reasonably satisfied.
And that sets off this really powerful two-step chain reaction. Step 1, the minister points the finger and designates a group. Step 2, boom, a whole set of criminal offenses just automatically attaches to that group. There's no middle step, no, let's check with a court first. It's a straight shot from that designation to criminalization.
And this is where the critique argues that justice gets turned completely upside down. It's a system of, and I'm quoting here, punishment first, adjudication later. Think about that. The consequences are handed out before any court gets a real chance to weigh in on whether that first decision was even right. It's totally backwards.
This chart really lays out just how radical this is. Look at how normal criminal law works. Guilt is based on what you do, your conduct. It needs an action, it needs intent, and a court decides everything before any punishment. Now look at the bill structure. Guilt is based on what you are, simply your status as a member of a group. And the punishment comes first, all kicked off by that one executive decision.
So you've got this new, kind of strange legal machine. Is it actually sound? Is it well built? To find out, the analysis performs what it calls the ultimate stress test. And trust me, this is where things get really compelling.
The method they use is called a neutral application test. Now, that sounds a bit technical, but the idea is actually pretty simple. You just take the law's exact wording, no funny business, no twisting it, and you apply it to a real-world set of facts to see what happens. It's a standard way to check if a law is written so broadly that it might have some serious unintended consequences.
And here's the test case, the real surprise, a state police force. Now, hold on. The analysis is absolutely clear this is not an accusation. It's a purely methodological choice. They picked a big, complex public institution with a long, well-documented history to really test the integrity of the law's design.
And what's crucial is that this test isn't based on hypotheticals or speculation. It uses only high-quality public evidence. We're talking findings from official royal commissions, reports from oversight bodies, formal public apologies from the institution itself, and hard statistical data. This keeps the whole thing grounded and neutral.
So what happens when you apply the bill's text to this mountain of public record? Well, according to the analysis, the law's logic begins to completely break down, and it leads to some truly alarming outcomes. So first off, if a minister were to look at those historical findings and decide to designate the police force, just like that, being a police officer, simply being a member of that organization, would automatically become a criminal offense. Your everyday job would be reclassified as a crime.
And if you follow that logic, senior police officers would suddenly be exposed to charges for directing and managing the organization. Their normal, day-to-day command functions would become criminal acts under this bill. And it goes even further than that. Routine things like running the police academy or even just managing the budget could fall under the bill's rules that criminalize training and funding for a designated group. The results are, as the source suggests, just patently absurd.
So what does this all add up to? Well, the stress test doesn't just reveal some simple little loophole. It points to a deep, deep structural problem with the law itself.
And this quote just captures the conclusion perfectly. The absurdity does not arise from misapplication. It arises from faithful application. The defect is therefore architectural. In other words, this bizarre outcome isn't the result of twisting the law's meaning. It's what happens when you apply the law exactly as it is written. The problem isn't a scratch on the paint, it's in the very foundation.
In fact, the full analysis identifies 27 distinct red flags in the bill's design. This table groups them into major categories, and it's really worth a look. You've got foundational constitutional defects like overbreadth and separation of powers issues. You've got criminal law distortions like creating guilt based on status instead of actions. It even points to executive overreach, where the government might rely on secret material. It's just a systematic breakdown that paints a picture of a deeply flawed piece of legal architecture.
This brings us to the final and maybe the most critical point of the entire analysis. What does all this mean for the lawmakers who are actually responsible for passing this bill? Because this critique serves as a very formal, very loud warning. To really drive home the argument that these flaws should have been obvious, the source makes this powerful contrast. On one side, you have a multi-billion-dollar government apparatus with entire legal divisions and intelligence capabilities. On the other side, this entire analysis was done by a single private individual with basically no resources. The point isn't about sympathy, it's to argue that these alleged defects are not subtle, they're not hidden.
And this puts the responsibility squarely back on Parliament. The argument is that once these risks are formally identified and put on the record, moving forward with the bill is no longer an accident. It becomes a conscious choice. History won't ask if they meant well. It'll ask if they knew the risks and did it anyway.
And that leaves us with this final, powerful question to think about. When a structural critique is this direct and the potential consequences are this severe, what does it really mean for a legislature to just move forward anyway? It's a question about foresight, about risk, and about the very nature of how we make our laws.